My name is David Syme. I've been working in digital marketing and digital communications for the last 21 years now. Now, I slowly but surely, as time, because of marketing is about 70% research and only about 30% promotion, I moved into digital marketing. That gave me the ability to see how long people were engaging with content online. And I noticed that it was a very short time in comparison to traditional media, and it was getting shorter all the time. So as time passed, I started to move in the direction of more image-based marketing because that was required because people weren't reading as long text as they had been before, and more image-based to a picture speaks a thousand words. So then attention spans continued to drop as connection speeds went up and there was more variety online. So I moved in the direction of video because if a picture speaks a thousand words, a video can speak a million. So that was my second company was Encore Video, and that was what we did. It was digitally tracked marketing using video. But then again, attention spans continued to drop. Now, my background was in international marketing and psychological marketing, so I was very interested in the psychology and the anthropology of this. What would be the likely next step? How could I train people's behavior into the future? And I realized that the next step after video would be immersion in media, not just watching it, not just being spoon fed it, but immersion and interaction, because that's what we're naturally built for. We're naturally built to be in a physical environment and interact with that physical environment. So around 5 or 6 years ago, I started to move in the direction of virtual and augmented reality, which I felt would deliver that. And everything exploded from then because there was so much development and there were so many things that I previously had not been able to do that I suddenly could do. So I also became a lecturer around about that point and delivered content for, trained up to be a lecturer in colleges for the City of Glasgow College in Scotland and the Chartered Institute of Marketing, where I delivered the future of digital marketing to their level fours. Then I got picked up by Google in order to present again digital communication skills to people through their Digital Garage initiative, which is now being performed all over the world online rather than face to face. So I do that quite regularly. I have a company, as Willie mentioned, called Encore Reality, and that is a follow-up to my online corporate video production company, and that's the one that deals with the use of augmented and virtual reality in various different industries, from education to construction to marketing to you name it. And I'm also now working with a company which applies this in industrial and medical environments called Riot VR, Riot Digital, which tries to take information from the real world, IoT, sensors, 360 cameras, 3D, that kind of thing, bring it into the virtual and augmented reality world for remote viewing and participation, but also on-site collaboration with people who are remote. And then we take that into big data visualization. We partnered during this time with Lenovo and Tesla Suit, who I'm going to go into in a bit more detail, so that we're covering things like deployment of these solutions in specific environments, be it virtual reality or augmented reality, but also haptics, physical feedback. So it's not just what you see and what you hear, but what you feel, what you touch, and even things like what you smell. Now I'm going to start with a kind of a contentious assertion here, okay? So, and I'm going to back this one up. Give us round about 5 years, and we will not only be communicating and with the world, or communicating with the technology around us using no physical interface, just our brainwaves. It's already happening actually, but those devices will be communicating with us, and we will be communicating with each other. This is called direct brain interface, DBI. And this is likely to become very commonplace within the next 5 years. And I'm hoping you're sitting at home shaking your heads and going, no chance, that's ridiculous. I'm going to prove to you that it is going to happen. First of all, I'm going to give you an idea of the growth of the market. Now, bear in mind, Scotland is one of the world leaders in this market. We don't mess around. It's possibly because it rains so much. Other countries provide amazing footballers. We produce games developers and tech developers because we're inside on our computers, and that's my assumption. And as a result of that, I'm in a very rich environment of programmers, producers, hardware developers, and so forth. And I really don't have to go far to find people with the skills that I require. So let's have a look at why that's so important for our country and for this industry. As we've seen in 2018, the XR, now that's extended reality, it's a combination of augmented and virtual reality together. The market for that was worth 5 billion. As we can see, the projection for 2023 is more than double that. Now, these industries have been around since the 1970s, and they've made it as far as 5 billion, and in just the space of 4 or 5 years, it's going to double. Now, that projection was made pre-COVID. So let's have a think about how that's going to be affected by COVID. I have never been busier than since the lockdown, because everything that people were doing face to face, they're now having to do remotely. And there's certain things that you can do like this, or in Zoom, or on various kind of face to face media and digital, which is fine. But when you're trying to teach somebody engineering skills, not so much. When you're trying to have a surgeon train somebody in how to suture a wound, and they're in Africa, and your surgeon who's training them is in the UK, you're not going to do that by Zoom. That's why I've been so busy, because a lot of things which previously would have been done face to face can't be, and that's where XR is coming in and picking up the slack. One of the reasons that one of the biggest changes that we're going to have in the short term is that wearable augmented reality is going to not only become commonplace, but ubiquitous. And the reason for that is what we call form factor. Form factor is the shape and the size and the usability of the tools that we use, of the technology that we use in product design. Previously, if you wanted to use augmented reality, you had two choices. Either you would point your mobile phone at things, which is a bit, clunky and not ideal, and it uses up your hands and people feel uncomfortable wandering around like that. Or you would wear something on your head which was weighed best part of a kilogram and looked ridiculous, and there's absolutely no way you would be walking down the street in public wearing this thing. And that cuts off most of the use cases when it comes to marketing, navigation, and all sorts of other things that we would want to use this for. The new slew of around about 20 new devices which hit the market this year, and you would have seen in the CES conference over in the Netherlands just a month ago, it means that form factor is going to be akin to these. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. And how they've done it, all the processing power is in your phone. You got a little cable, it attaches to your phone. Cables are safer for EM radiation near to your head, and they're faster. And your phone does the processing. You've already got the phone, and also most of the cost of the processing you've already paid for with your phone. So really, the glasses just become a display device. And using something called waveform technology, which just means that the lens reflects the image back to your eyes from little projectors, which are around about here, you can see everything around you perfectly fine, but you can see a graphical overlay. And as I say, the things that you're wearing are not much heavier than a normal pair of glasses and look largely the same. Apple have just announced that they're releasing a set of these, and Apple are amazing at introducing technology which might already exist, but they will get it to market, they will get mass uptake, and this is what I mean by ubiquitous. These are going to be everywhere, and it's going to change the landscape for augmented reality, because all of the barriers between people using it and not using it will be removed in one fell swoop. I mentioned before that it's not just about what you can see and what you can hear, it's about what you can feel. We're not just visual creatures, we're tactile creatures. If you look at a baby, it'll pick things up and hold things and usually put them in their mouth, but we haven't got to that for technology. But these gloves that you're seeing here will allow people who are using augmented and virtual reality not only to pick up objects in real life, which we can already do with something called hand tracking. The system recognizes the shape and form of your hand and responds accordingly, but you'll feel it. So your hands, when you pick up an object, your fingers will be stopped in place around, let's say, a rock, and won't be able to move any further, which gives your brain the impression that it's coming into contact with an object. And using tactile feedback on the fingertips and the palms, usually using tiny little pneumatic pins which come up, or little bubbles, you'll feel the texture, and in some cases even the temperature of the object that you're picking up. Now again, the problem with these previously is that they were bulky, they required a large piece of hardware to run them, they were expensive, they took ages to put on, you had to calibrate them to individual hands, but there's two companies at the moment, one is called Sense Glove, and the other one is Tesla Suit themselves, who have brought out gloves that you can just slip on and you're away. If you're wearing a headset or glasses, it connects to them wirelessly, and that's it, that's all you need to do. And they're small, the form factor is small, so you can carry them about with you. Other things that are changing the way, it's the control mechanism. These are the things which are changing the way that we interact with these this technology and the digital objects. Now, if you're trying to keep your hands free, Whether you're using these kind of haptic gloves or not, you need to be able to control it without having to go over to a keyboard or bring up a menu or any of the things that we become used to with touchscreens. So what we're using is speech control, voice control, very much akin to your Alexa and your Google Home, where you will just ask the device to do something, and it will relay the information to you through bone conductivity. So nobody else can hear it, and it doesn't interfere with your hearing of the world around you, but it resonates at a frequency that you can hear what the computer is then saying back to you. And that is an easy one to achieve and will work in any kind of environment, no matter how noisy, but it's safer. Say you were cycling down the road, you'll still be able to hear traffic behind you and stuff that you can't when you're wearing normal earphones. But other things, hand tracking, as I mentioned, the ability for the machine to see what your hands are doing and respond accordingly. But what this image is indicating is eye tracking. Now that means that if you want to activate something in front of you or a graphic, you look at it and the device itself is looking at your eyes. So it can then work out what you are looking at and therefore what it needs to activate. That means that you can just look at an object and either activate or make a motion and it will open. This is what we call a soft control, and it's the reason that Nokia phones were so popular back in the 90s was that they had one button which would respond according to what you were looking at. Simplicity is key here. And that's going to mean that we can free up our hands so we can get on with other tasks as we consume our extended reality data. Here's another one that's going to change the landscape, literally, sorry for the pun. It's called SLAM. The SLAM stands for Simultaneous Location and Mapping. You'll probably hear this a lot. Now, what that means is the device knows where you are and it knows where you're looking, just like your phone does. Your phone knows what angle it's at and where it's located in space. But you're wearing a device, whether it be virtual or augmented, which is then looking at that world around you and making the connection. Okay, I'm looking forward here and I'm looking at a wall and there's windows in it. And then it takes a measure of that. It takes photos of that and it uses something called LiDAR, which is a kind of a light version of radar. It's working out how far away things are and the shape of them in space. That means it can create a three-dimensional model with photographic overlay so that that model is photorealistic. And as soon as you looked at it, it goes, okay, well, that building is located here in the world and currently it looks like this and it's this shape. Now I want you to imagine that everybody's wearing these glasses, or even 30% of the population are wearing these glasses and they're picking up that information. That means that this data, this digital twin of the world is being constantly captured, gathered, and updated all the time. That means that we can have something called a spatial web, an internet of things, an internet of the world around us, where we can visit places and get up-to-date information on what they look like, where they are, and even sensor information. Let's say it's an oil platform, that pipe over there is currently at this pressure, this vibration level, this temperature. Imagine how useful that's going to be for industry, quite apart from navigation and, in this case, heritage. So that means that these digital twins are being built, stored, and constantly updated by you and me, which we call user-generated content. And it's, to be honest with you, the only reliable way to keep big data up to date is to outsource it to everybody in the world to do. Now we get to the brain-computer interaction. Digital brain interfaces are the final frontier, and they not only allow us to control our extended reality equipment, but they ultimately allow us to bypass our own sensory apparatus, our eyes, our ears, our touch, to consume information and communicate with IoT, with the Internet of Things, Internet-enabled objects like fridges or whatever, and each other directly. How's that going to work? Well, Elon Musk has got a Neuralink concept, which is tiny little fibers which are actually implanted directly into your brain, and they allow you to think and control objects through this Neuralink. Personally, I have a background relating to healthcare, and I have a lot of friends in healthcare, and anything like that which bypasses what we call the blood-brain barrier, which is an extremely tight mesh in our brain which keeps all the bad stuff away from our brains, anything which bypasses that blood-brain barrier is extremely risky. So personally, I think that's probably not the way we're going to go. It's very invasive and it requires surgery. The way that we can go is using something called temporal interference, it's called. So imagine you've got 2 or 3 high-frequency beams of electromagnetic radiation. So just EM radiation, which would normally pass harmlessly through us and not affect us. If you then triangulate these beams, 1, 2, 3, you can very accurately create a field, a temporal resonance field, where the high frequencies interfere with each other and slow themselves down to a frequency which is what we call bioresonant. It vibrates at the frequency of the physical brain, allowing us to stimulate that bit of the physical brain anywhere in the brain very accurately without any surgical interference. Now, using something like that would mean that we could actually activate the bit of the brain that sees the color blue, activate the bit of the brain that smells violets, activate the bit of the brain that feels the sensation of heat on our skin. And all it would require would be a non-invasive headset like the one you see here. Now again, I'm getting into speculation here, but the technology already exists. It just needs to be refined, and it is being refined by labs all over the world. So watch this space. So a lot of people aren't 100% sure what the difference is between augmented and virtual reality. So let me just clarify this, okay? Virtual reality is when you are fully immersed in the digital environment. It's all around you and that's all you can see. You're in a digital environment. Augmented reality is you are seeing the real world around you, but you're seeing a digital overlay, additional information augmenting the real world around you. So just keep that in mind. When we talk about virtual reality, you're in a virtual world. You could be seeing something that's elsewhere in the world, a digital twin, or you could be seeing something that's completely made up and fabricated in the digital world. Augmented reality, you're seeing the real world, but you're getting additional information over the top of it. Okay? So talking about virtual reality is being used for many, many things at the moment. It's being used for medication and healthcare, particularly mental health care, recreating phobia experiences very, very gradually so that people can become comfortable with, for instance, being outside if they're agoraphobic, being around spiders or mice or birds or snakes, just very, very gradually without ever actually having to be around them. And if it gets too much, they just take the headset off, right? Being used all the time. It's also very good for creating calming environments for people who maybe have autistic spectrum disorder and have been maybe hyperactivated by something and need to be calmed down again. You can go into a space that they're comfortable with, and it can be used for even pain control. If you can keep your mind focused on a specific task or object, particularly immersive one, that's proved to be one of the best distractions from chronic pain, long-term pain that just goes on all the time, and acute pain, sudden pain, maybe from changing wounds or burns or that kind of thing. This is the Tesla suit that I mentioned before. Now what this is it's a suit which can create sensory feedback. While you're wearing the virtual reality suit, this could be an impact, it could be the sensation of touch, it could be the sensation of temperature, it can even restrict your motions and movement, whilst at the same time working out what your movement range is. So it's very, very good for physiotherapy and working out people's movement ranges. It's very good for recreating the restrictions of certain working environments or sporting environments or conditions. It can even measure your galvanic skin response to see how sweaty and nervous you are. And it can use things called TENS machines, with TENS activators to actually activate your muscles. So you can really, with this technology, see exactly how the person is feeling, moving, responding, and send information to restrict and stimulate their movement and their nerves. It's an incredible device, and it's being used all over the world for everything from medication to workplace safety training to you name it. One of the things that I do is our company Riot Digital is all about deployment of virtual reality in the field. So we've created a box which basically has all the headsets in there, can pick up on nearby 5G or any kind of network to give anybody the internet that they require. And it's full of devices which just work straight out of the box. And this is particularly good for deployment in classrooms, in far-flung areas that might not have internet connections, and allows people to use these immersive environments to train and meet and so forth, no matter where they are in the world. In terms of manufacturing and design, we use something called a pass-through headset. This is a combination between virtual and augmented reality. This is true extended reality or mixed reality. So you're seeing a fully digital world, and it's using video data to then show you what the real world is around you. That's currently being used by aerospace engineers, rocket design. It's being used for oil and gas, the design of renewable energy and so forth, and even surgical applications. And data science. Now, the thing about data science is that a lot of histograms and ways of viewing big data can be quite confusing for stakeholders who themselves are not data scientists. What using virtual reality allows us to do, this example is called Virtualytics. It uses artificial intelligence to show data in the real world, and you can come in with people who maybe are data scientists, but maybe the other people are engineers and other people are financiers, and different stakeholders from different backgrounds can then talk to each other and say, okay, well, what does that red column mean over there over North America? And then they can be told by the people who are the experts. Now, it doesn't matter where they are in the world, they could be in 5 different countries simultaneously, but to all intents and purposes, they're in the same physical space viewing live feed data. Very useful. Now we're going to get into the augmented reality side of things just briefly. Augmented reality, again, is being used, I mentioned it's being used for engineering and so forth, but it's also being used for real-time applications. There's a team in Belgium who are using augmented reality using a HoloLens headset, which means that they can see scans of somebody's brain so that when they're carrying out brain surgery, they know where the tumor is, where the knot of arteries that they need to avoid nicking with the scalpel are before they even make the first cut. Now that's incredibly useful, and the accuracy is within a millimeter. So they're not going to use it as instead of their own eyes, but they're going to use it as a backup so that they can have forewarning of where they're going and what they're doing. This is being used in osteocare, as we can see here, bone health, and used to track, again, as we can see here, where the carotid artery is, so that we can avoid nicking this main artery and causing a massive bleed. You can just get in there confidently using the augmented reality to guide them past these danger zones and get in to do what they need to do. Navigation is a major thing as well. Anybody who's ever nearly run into the back of somebody when they've been looking at their sat nav on their phone or in their car, this is a major way of improving that, because the navigation is in front of you. You're not looking away. It's not getting in the way of what you're looking at, but it is telling you where to go. If you're walking down the street, you could set your filters to sales, shopping, even digital art, graffiti, if you wanted to be in that world. But you could also use it specifically for navigation. You could also use it specifically for route finding, heritage. The applications are endless. But what's important? What's important is to be able to wear it, because you don't want to be having to walk around like that. Google themselves tried to use augmented reality for navigation, and they were so worried about people wandering into the road whilst looking at their phone that they ended up discontinuing it, because they were so concerned about the accidents which might happen. That's so much less likely to happen if you're just wearing the glasses and you've got the display, as long as it's not covering too much, in front of you. Now this technology, particularly Tesla's suit, but again HoloLens and these kind of advanced augmented reality wearables, are being used by the military to reduce collateral damage. Collateral damage is where they come in and they want to know who is the friendly and who is the enemy, so that they can avoid hitting the former and go after the latter. It's also, it helps them to protect themselves, and is also a very, very good way to train up in what the majority of people in the military are actually doing, is things like engineering functions and support functions. And again, these are very fast ways to train people to do this kind of thing. We're even using it for welding training, and it's reducing the time it takes for to train people up in advanced welding offshore by something like 2/3, and reducing the waste of waste metals and gases and so forth by, I think, about 80%. Don't quote me on that. I can share that information later. And again, it's being used in retail. Now, particularly at the moment, we're all stuck at home, and yes, okay, that Amazon's doing better than it's ever done before because it's selling so much stuff online. But that's no good if you're trying to work out whether a sofa is going to fit in your living room or a bed's going to work with your bedroom layout. You want to use augmented reality to try before you buy, see what things are going to look like in context. And even with the more advanced augmented reality, try out the functionality, see what it can do. Now, the problem that we had there before was that you had to download an app onto your phone, and you were only ever going to use that app for that one function, and that put people off. But now we use something called web-based augmented reality. And that means if you want to see something, you either point your phone at a QR code, click on a link, type in a URL, or you can get a text message that just says tap here, activated, and it will be activated for as long as you need it to, and as soon as you don't need it to, just like a web page, it's gone. Very useful, making this so much more common and popular. Okay, I may have overrun a little bit there, sorry about that, but if anybody has any questions, I'm here to take them. As challenging as you can get, I'm up for it.
Thank you, David. Thank you for this really exciting presentation. Yeah, we'll enjoy your presence just a few minutes more to take care about some questions. This is the Q&A session. Dear audience, feel free to use the box and put your queries right now. We already received some. The first one, what you showed, David, could be really life-changing, but in Scotland, in terms of policy investment, is the country doing enough to capitalize on this trend?
It's hard to say. It's a good question. We're actually trying to deal with the Scottish Government at the moment for the application of virtual reality in education, because obviously a lot of kids, school kids, primary, high school, and college, further in higher education and universities, aren't able to meet up. And we figured that this would be a really, really good solution for that. And ironically, although we've been talking to the Scottish Government for now, about a year, we're probably going to get buy-in quicker from the English government, because they were just like, yeah, we need it, give us it. And they weren't just waiting and trying to get through red tape. And I worry that we are kind of fiddling while Rome burns here, that we could move a bit faster. But that said, we've been speaking to libraries and so forth to get people virtual access to libraries and tours of museums. And that is moving a lot faster. So swings and roundabouts. Some areas yes, some areas no.
All right, one from Billy. Thank you for your question, Billy. Do you think extended reality will contribute to class boundaries being widened? Seems more accessible to wealthier people.
Now that is a good question, and that's something that I'm quite passionate about. The reason that I'm so keen on things like web-based augmented reality and virtual reality, and in particular device agnostic XR, now that means it will run on any device, is that I worry about the digital divide. I worry about the people who can afford virtual reality headsets or even like those things. They're expensive. Even the newer, cheaper ones like the Quest 2 are still expensive. And what we need to bear in mind is that there's a lot of kids out there who don't have access to the internet at all at home, and sometimes don't have any devices, internet-enabled devices at home, like mobile phones even. So what about them? Do we really want to create a kind of a digital class system, as you suggest, which separates people? And so what we've been doing is, for instance, with the virtual reality education solution, we've made it that it works on any device. So it will work on a virtual reality headset. It'll also work on a PC, an old rubbishy one. It'll work on a tablet. It'll work on a basic mobile phone, anything. And it only requires you to click on a link, so you don't need to download stuff onto your device or any of that. So what I'm hoping here, because we're looking at a rollout for in Botswana for school kids, is like 500,000 school kids needing education, and there's no way that the Botswana government can afford to equip everybody with a virtual reality headset, but they can and might be able to provide them with low-cost mobile phones, which we can then equip with this technology to allow people to access these. And using something called the Google Cardboard or equivalent, you can then slip your phone into a device which you can wear should you wish, and to all intents and purposes, you've got yourself a basic virtual reality headset, but you don't even need to do that. So yes, it could, but me and many other people like me, most other people in my field, are working hard to make sure that that doesn't happen, because we don't want it to be restricted by technology and ownership and cost.
It's a really high interest topic. We can see it today because we receive a lot of questions. We will try to answer to everyone. Next up, Alex asked, what are your thoughts on the challenges of using this technology, like hardware in particular, in hazardous environments like offshore or energy industry?
Good question. The offshore, your problems are mainly explosive environments, and this is also the case for Scottish distilleries, mills, where airborne flour is highly volatile. So we need to make sure that any devices that we're using are ATEX compliant, and that means that they will not cause explosions, that any sparks which could be created are protected from. Fortunately, I'm working on a team with a guy called Andy Russell, and he specialises in ATEX compliant hardware, and we're introducing ATEX compliant hardware into North Sea oil, which allows people to have on-site augmented reality without any risk of explosion. So it can be helped.
All right, Roman asked a bit more technical question, I think. Well, to me, at least. What role will cloud streaming, cloud XR play in the coming years for the use of AR or VR?
Amazing question. Okay, so Cloud XR streaming, for those of you who aren't in the know, is being able to, just like we used to have to download movies onto our computers, now we can stream them on Netflix, which means you don't need to download them, you can get access to them really quickly. It's only showing you what you're seeing at that time. The same thing can be done with really, really big 3D models, where instead of having to download this vast 3D model, which makes a movie look like a tiny bit, you can stream those polygons, and that's going to make a massive difference. Up until now, it was just Microsoft with HoloLens that allowed that streaming, but now I'm working with a company who are based in, I believe, Belgium again, and they are streaming for any device. So you can stream polygons, and that means that anyone can have access anywhere, even on a very low powered device like a phone or like a pair of augmented reality glasses. That's going to have a massive impact, particularly in the digital twin thing we were talking about, because you'll be able to stream information to your glasses and then from your glasses back to the cloud to update that digital twin of the world.
All right. We also have a nice comment from Raul. He is in Rwanda, Africa. So thank you for your comment, Raul. And you are asking for so long. People, enterprises are trying to figuring out how this could be affordable for people. But do you think it will happen or anytime soon? Because he's in Rwanda and he tried to look for like solutions to have it like an affordable way. What do you think?
Well, you can see my link at the bottom there. Get in touch with me directly. I'm actually speaking to the African Development Funds about ways that we can do this and using something called mobile device management. It means that if for instance, a big investment is made by UNICEF or World Bank, they can be sure that these devices are going to the people that they're meant to go to. They're being used by the people who are meant to be using them, and they're only being used for the things that they're meant to be used for. So they don't end up in Russia for somebody watching Netflix. They will end up where they're meant to go. And that confidence means that there's a much higher likelihood that these large international non-govs are likely to invest in this, and they are. And that means that we can control those devices, track them, and then what we call brick them, switch them all permanently if they're being abused or they're being stolen. And that really is going to help. So I think that within the next year, maybe year and a half, you are going to start to see rollouts of this technology.